I was 55 years old when I made the biggest mistake of my life in a darkened movie theater. And honestly, it might have been the best mistake I ever made. The indie cinema on Hudson Avenue was my monthly ritual, my escape from endless community board meetings and zoning disputes. I'd reserved my favorite aisle seat online, the one with extra legroom, and arrived 10 minutes early with my popcorn. But when I reached row J, seat 7, a younger woman was already sitting there, her brunette hair catching the pre-show lighting as she scrolled through her phone. "Excuse me, you're in my seat," I said, trying to keep my voice pleasant. She looked up, green eyes sharp and unapologetic. "I don't think so. This is J7. "Yes, which I reserved." She pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and showed me her ticket stub. J7. Same showing. My face burned as I checked my own confirmation email and realized I'd selected the wrong date when booking. Next week's showing, not tonight's. "My mistake," I muttered, starting to back away. "Just sit here." She gestured to J8, the seat beside her. "It's empty anyway." I should have moved to a different row entirely. Should have preserved my dignity and found a seat far from this witness to my embarrassing error. Instead, I sat down, hyper-aware of her presence in the darkness. The movie started, something about a pianist in 1950s New York, but I couldn't focus. Every time the screen brightened, I caught glimpses of her profile, the elegant line of her neck, the way her fingers tapped silently against the armrest between us. She caught me looking once. Our eyes met for maybe 3 seconds before I jerked my attention back to the screen, my heart hammering like I was 16 again. 3 days later, I walked into Common Grounds for my usual morning coffee and froze. She was there, sitting at a corner table buried under catalogs and paperwork, a half-empty mug beside her laptop. The universe was clearly laughing at me. I could have left. Should have left. Instead, I walked straight to her table. "I need to apologize," I said. She looked up, recognition flickering across her face. "For what, exactly?" "Being rude at the theater. I was embarrassed about the booking mistake and took it out on you." A smile tugged at her lips. "You weren't that rude." "Flustered, maybe." She gestured to the empty chair. "I'm Faith Clark." "Maria Allen." I sat down, noticing the estate sale catalogs spread across the table. "Antique dealer?" "Guilty. I own a shop in Bricktown. These are properties I'm evaluating for a buying trip next week." She paused, studying me. "Wait, Maria Allen? The community activist who's fighting to save the historic district?" "That's me." "Then we need to talk." She leaned forward, intensity replacing casual friendliness. "My shop is in one of those buildings they want to demolish. I've been trying to figure out who has the political connections to actually stop this, and apparently she just apologized to me for a seat mix-up." We talked for 2 hours. She explained her business, 10 years building a client base for Depression-era furniture and Victorian pieces. I outlined the Preservation Coalition's strategy, the zoning appeals, the donor cultivation. When I finally stood to leave, she caught my wrist. "Can I show you something?" "My shop. I'd love your opinion on some pieces I'm considering for a neighborhood fundraiser." I should have said no. Should have kept it professional, exchanged emails, maintained appropriate distance. But her hand was warm on my wrist, and something in those green eyes made me feel reckless. "Sure. When?" "Now?" Her shop was exactly what I expected. Organized chaos, furniture from 6 different eras crammed into a space that smelled like lemon oil and old wood. Faith moved through it like a dancer, her hands trailing over surfaces as she explained provenance and restoration techniques. She stopped at a mahogany desk, running her fingers along its edge. 1890s. Original hardware. Found it in an estate sale in Tulsa. "Look at this." She pulled me closer, demonstrating a hidden drawer mechanism. Her shoulder pressed against mine, and I froze, suddenly aware of how little space existed between us. "The craftsmanship is remarkable," I managed, my voice sounding strange. "Maria." She turned her head, and her face was inches from mine. "Are you okay?" "Fine. I just remembered I have a meeting." I stepped back quickly, nearly knocking over a floor lamp. "I'll call you about the fundraiser." I left before she could respond, my hands shaking as I unlocked my car. I was 55 years old, for God's sake. Too old for whatever this was, this flutter in my chest, this heat under my skin. Too old to be noticing another woman's hands, her eyes, the way she said my name. But driving home, all I could think about was when I'd see her again. The first text came at 11:30 that night. Question about historical designation requirements for commercial properties. You awake? I stared at my phone in the darkness of my bedroom, knowing I should ignore it, knowing this was dangerous territory. I typed back anyway. "Yes, what do you need?" What started as a question about zoning laws spiraled into an hour-long conversation about everything else. Faith told me about her failed engagement 5 years ago. How she'd called it off 3 weeks before the wedding because something fundamental felt wrong, like wearing shoes 2 sizes too small. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't push, but something in the way she wrote it made my chest tighten. "What about you?" she asked. "Ever married?" "No. Came close once in my 20s. Realized I'd rather be alone than settle." "That's not settling. That's knowing yourself." I fell asleep with my phone in my hand, her last message still glowing on the screen. "Good night, Maria. Thanks for staying up with me." It became our routine. Every night around 11, my phone would light up with questions that could have waited until morning but somehow couldn't. We talked about her childhood in Kansas, my years organizing rent strikes in Chicago before moving to Oklahoma City, the strange loneliness of building a life that looks successful from the outside while feeling hollow inside. I told her things I'd never shared with anyone, not even Maggie, my best friend of 20 years. The fundraiser was Maggie's idea, a gala to raise money for the Preservation Coalition's legal fund. I spent 3 weeks organizing it, securing the venue, courting donors, deliberately not thinking about whether Faith would come. She arrived 20 minutes late wearing a black dress that made my prepared speech evaporate from my brain. I stumbled through my remarks, hyper-aware of her standing near the back, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. We raised $53,000. After my closing thank you speech, Faith appeared beside me as I tried to escape to the coat check. "Dance with me," she said. "I don't dance." Liar. She took my hand and pulled me toward the makeshift dance floor where a jazz trio played something slow and old. Her hand settled on my waist, then slid lower to the small of my back. We swayed without speaking, the room fading until it was just us. Just the warmth of her palm through the thin fabric of my dress, the scent of her perfume, something like vanilla and smoke. The song ended, but we didn't move apart. Faith's face was so close I could count her eyelashes. She leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, to laugh it off, to pretend this wasn't happening. I didn't pull away. Her lips touched mine, soft and questioning. The kiss lasted maybe 5 seconds before panic flooded through me and I jerked back, mumbling something incoherent about needing air. I disappeared into the crowd, leaving her standing alone on the dance floor. For the next week, I dodged her calls and texts. I threw myself into a new campaign to block a strip mall development, worked 16-hour days, stayed too busy to think about the hurt in her eyes when I'd walked away. Maggie cornered me in my office on day 8. "What happened with Faith?" "Nothing happened." "Maria, you've mentioned that woman's name approximately 40 times a day for 2 months. And now you won't return her calls. What happened?" I misread some signals. It was awkward. I'm giving her space. Maggie's expression was somewhere between pity and exasperation. "You're the worst liar I've ever met." Faith ambushed me outside City Hall the next afternoon. 1 minute, I was walking to my car. The next, she was blocking my path, arms crossed, anger and hurt radiating off her in waves. You don't get to kiss me back and then disappear, she said. I didn't kiss you back. Yes, you did. And now you're lying about it, which is worse than running away. She stepped closer. I get that you're scared. I'm scared too, but I'm not a coward. The word hit like a slap. I made a mistake. I gave you the wrong impression, and I'm sorry. But this can't happen. Why? Because you're 55? Because I'm younger? Because we're both women. Her voice cracked on the last word. Which excuse are you going with, Maria? All of them. None of them. It doesn't matter. I moved past her toward my car. I'm sorry. You didn't misread anything, she called after me. You're just too scared to admit what you want. I drove home with her words echoing in my head, hating myself for being exactly what she'd called me. A coward. 2 weeks of silence stretched between us like a wound that wouldn't heal. I heard through Maggie that Faith's business partner, Robert, had convinced her to apply for some reality TV competition show. Something about small businesses competing for startup capital. I told myself I didn't care, that it was better this way, that we could both move on. Then Faith showed up at my door at midnight on a Tuesday, her face pale in the porch light. Can I come in? I stepped aside without a word. She paced my living room, hands shaking, and I realized I'd never seen her anything less than composed. I did something stupid, she said finally. Robert convinced me to go on the show. Small business comeback. $100,000 in prize money. I need it, Maria. My landlord is selling the building and I can't afford to buy it without that money. Okay. So, what's the problem? The producers. They kept pushing during the interviews, asking about my personal life, why I never married. I deflected, but this one producer, Jennifer, she wouldn't let it go. And I was tired and stressed, and I mentioned that someone had helped me understand what I really wanted from life. She stopped pacing, met my eyes. They asked if it was a woman. I said yes. My stomach dropped. Faith. I didn't use your name. I swear I didn't. But it'll air in 6 weeks, and the producers always leak stuff early for publicity. The local press will dig. They'll find out about the fundraiser, about us working together. Your reputation? My reputation? The words came out sharper than I intended. That's what you're worried about. Her face went blank, carefully neutral. I thought that's what you'd be worried about, since you've spent 2 weeks pretending I don't exist because you're terrified someone might figure out you kissed a woman. That's not fair, isn't it? She turned toward the door. I shouldn't have come. I just wanted to warn you before. I caught her wrist. Wait. We stood there, my hand wrapped around her wrist, her pulse racing under my fingers. All the excuses I'd been telling myself for 2 weeks crumbled. The age difference, the potential judgment, the disruption to my carefully controlled life, none of it mattered as much as the fact that I was about to let her walk out my door again. Stay, I said quietly. Please stay. Why? So you can push me away again in the morning? No. So I can stop being a coward. I took a breath. You were right. About everything. I was scared, and I hurt you, and I'm sorry. Something shifted in her expression. What are you saying, Maria? I'm saying that if the story's coming out anyway, it should be on our terms, not theirs. 3 days later, I called an emergency meeting of the community board. Maggie knew what was coming. I'd told her the night before. But the other board members looked confused as Faith, and I walked in together and took seats at the front of the room. Thank you for coming on short notice, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to tell you something before you hear it elsewhere. Faith and I are together. We're in a relationship, and I wanted you to hear it from me directly before the media gets hold of it. The room erupted. Whispers, a few gasps. 2 board members immediately standing and gathering their things. Jim Patterson from the Historic Preservation Committee pointed at Faith. "This is what you meant when you said someone's special?" "Her?" Maggie stood up, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Anyone who has a problem with Maria's personal life can leave now, because I'm not sitting here listening to anyone question her integrity or her dedication to this community." 2 more people stood and walked out. The door slammed behind them. "Anyone else?" Maggie asked. The remaining 7 board members stayed seated. Mark Chen, who'd been skeptical of the preservation project from the start, cleared his throat. "Your personal life is your business, Maria. Let's talk about how we handle the press when this breaks." In the parking lot afterward, alone in my car with Faith beside me, the adrenaline crashed. My hands started shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition. Faith took them gently, holding them still. "You were incredible in there," she whispered. "I lost 4 board members. You kept 7, and you were honest. That took guts." She cupped my face, her thumbs brushing my cheekbones. "You're the bravest person I know." She kissed me then, slow and deep, and this time I didn't pull away. This time I kissed her back like I meant it, like I wasn't afraid anymore, like maybe I'd finally figured out what I wanted after 55 years of settling for less. We broke apart when someone's car alarm went off 3 rows over. Faith laughed against my lips, and I realized I'd never heard her laugh like that before, unguarded and real. "Come home with me," she said. "Your place or mine? Does it matter?" "No," I said, finally starting the car. "It doesn't matter at all." The local news picked up the story before the reality show even aired. Longtime activist in same-sex relationship ran on the 6 o'clock broadcast, complete with footage of Faith and me leaving the community board meeting together. My phone exploded with calls and texts, half supportive, half venomous. The major donor who'd pledged $20,000 to the Bricktown Preservation Project withdrew his commitment. His email was terse: "Can no longer support this initiative given recent developments." 3 other smaller donors followed suit within hours. Faith's shop got hit worse. Someone spray-painted slurs across the front window overnight. She called me at dawn, her voice shaking but trying to sound calm. "It's just paint. Robert's helping me clean it up." I drove over immediately, fury burning in my chest. But when I arrived, a crowd had already gathered. Not protesters, supporters. The owner of the coffee shop next door was scrubbing alongside Robert. A group of teenagers from the youth center I'd helped establish were painting over the slurs with primer. Maggie showed up with breakfast sandwiches for everyone. "You're not alone in this," she told Faith firmly. "Neither of you are." The Latinx Community Center offered their space for our Preservation Coalition meetings after the Methodist Church backed out. Younger activists I'd mentored over the years flooded my email with messages of support, several sharing their own coming-out stories and thanking me for my visibility. Faith's regular customers organized a solidarity shopping day that brought in more revenue than she'd seen in any single week that year, but none of it solved the immediate crisis. Faith's landlord called 2 days after the news broke. "I'm accelerating the sale," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "You have 30 days to vacate or match the buyer's offer." Faith went pale. "How much?" $320,000. Cash. She hung up and stared at her phone. "I don't have that, even with the reality show prize money, which I won't get for months, and only if I win." "We'll figure it out," I said, more confidently than I felt. I spent 3 days leveraging every political connection I had, trying to delay the sale or find legal loopholes. But the buyer had money and influence, city council members in his pocket. Robert suggested relocating, finding a cheaper space outside Bricktown. "I've spent 3 years building clientele here," Faith said, her voice breaking. "This location is everything." I watched her lose hope, piece by piece, and it gutted me. Our relationship was barely 2 weeks old, and already I was dragging her down with me. That night, lying in Faith's bed above the shop, I made a decision. I'm liquidating my retirement fund, I said. We'll make a counteroffer together. She sat up abruptly. Absolutely not. Faith, you are not throwing away your security for my business. That's insane. It's not just your business anymore. It's ours. This is what partners do. Partners. Her voice was sharp. Maria, we've been together for 2 weeks. You can't make decisions like this based on... Based on what? On loving you? The words came out before I could stop them, hanging in the air between us like a challenge. She stared at me. You don't mean that. I do. I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I do. So let me do this. No. She got out of bed, pacing. You're being recklessly romantic and it's going to destroy your future. I won't let you. Our first real fight spiraled from there. Me accusing her of not trusting my commitment, her arguing I was making impulsive decisions to prove something. We went to bed angry, turned away from each other, the space between us feeling like miles. Maggie showed up the next morning with coffee and a proposal. Community Investment Cooperative, she announced, spreading papers across Faith's kitchen table. Multiple small investors buy shares, spreads the risk, builds community ownership, and creates a model for other businesses in the district. Faith and I looked at each other, our fight from the night before still raw between us. It could work, Faith said slowly. It's better than your retirement fund plan, Maggie told me pointedly, and more sustainable than Faith trying to do this alone. Within a week, we had 30 local investors committed, amounts ranging from $1,000 to $15,000. Even some of the initial skeptics contributed after I made an impassioned pitch at a neighborhood meeting about preserving local businesses against corporate development. The buyer tried to pressure the landlord into refusing our offer, but public opinion had shifted. The city council meeting to approve the cooperative sale was standing room only. Faith and I presented our model together, tag-teaming the questions from council members. The vote passed, 6-3. Walking out of City Hall into camera flashes and reporter questions, Faith grabbed my hand and laced our fingers together. It was the first time we'd been openly affectionate in public. Her palm was sweaty, her grip tight, but she didn't let go. Ms. Allen, how does it feel to win? A reporter called out. I looked at Faith, her green eyes bright with tears and triumph, and smiled. Like coming home, I said. The building purchase closed 3 weeks later, but the reality show finale hung over us like a storm cloud. Faith had seen rough cuts of her episodes and warned me the producers had made our relationship a central storyline. I tried not to think about my face appearing on national television, about my 70-year-old aunt in Tulsa finding out this way, about the conservative donors who still funded half my coalition's work. The night it aired, Faith, Robert, Maggie, and I gathered in Faith's apartment with Thai food and too much wine. The show opened with dramatic music and a montage of Faith evaluating estates, negotiating with sellers, her sharp business sense on full display. Then came the interview segments. Tell us about your personal life, Jennifer, the producer, asked on screen, her voice syrupy with fake concern. You mentioned someone special? Faith's televised face was guarded but honest. Yes. A woman I met through community work. She showed me what I'd been missing, what I'd been afraid to want. The editing was surprisingly sympathetic. Instead of sensationalizing it, they'd woven our story into Faith's business journey, framing it as her finding the courage to be authentic. They never showed my face, never used my name, just referred to me as a local activist. The final shot of Faith's segment showed her in the shop, surrounded by furniture and history, talking about building something real. She didn't win the grand prize. That went to a bakery owner from Nashville. But within an hour of the episode airing, Faith's phone started blowing up. A national antique dealer network reached out about a partnership. 3 major clients from Texas and Colorado contacted her about buying pieces. And most unexpectedly, an email from someone named Patricia Hoffman in San Francisco. I'm a retired professor and longtime collector, it read. Your story moved me deeply. I'd like to contribute $50,000 toward your building purchase to support your business and your courage. Please, let me know where to send the check. Faith read it aloud twice, her voice cracking. Is this real? Robert verified it within an hour. Patricia was legitimate, wealthy, and serious. The check arrived 4 days later with a note, "Build something beautiful. The world needs more people like you." The publicity shifted everything. What had felt like a liability became an asset. The community investment model attracted attention from urban planning journals and small business associations. We started getting requests to consult on similar projects in other cities. Faith's shop became a destination, featured in a regional magazine article about Oklahoma City's revitalization. But the real fight came 6 weeks after the show aired, when the strip mall developer I'd been battling submitted new plans for a different Bricktown lot. This one threatened 5 businesses, including the coffee shop that had supported us during the spray painting incident. The city council meeting was packed. The developer had money, lawyers, and promises of jobs and tax revenue. I had a PowerPoint presentation and 30 angry business owners. This isn't about preserving the past, I argued, standing at the podium with Faith in the front row. It's about protecting the character that makes this neighborhood valuable in the first place. Tear down these buildings for a generic strip mall, and you destroy the very thing that brings people to Bricktown. The developer's lawyer smirked. Miss Allen's coalition has a vested interest in blocking development. Her partner owns property in the district. Her partner owns a business that employs 4 people and pays taxes, Faith said, standing up. Your client wants to build a chain drugstore that will put 3 local pharmacies out of business. Who has the vested interest here? The room erupted in applause. The council called for order, but the energy had shifted. When they voted an hour later, the development proposal was rejected 5-4. Walking out of City Hall, Faith grabbed my hand in front of the lingering reporters without hesitation. We'd stopped hiding weeks ago, stopped caring who saw us together. Her fingers laced through mine felt natural now, inevitable. We make a good team, she said. We do. I pulled her close, right there on the City Hall steps, and kissed her in front of God and the Oklahoma City Gazette's photographer. Let them print it. Let everyone see. The next morning, our photo ran on the front page of the local section. Coalition leaders celebrate development victory. We were smiling in the shot, foreheads pressed together, her hand on my cheek. Maggie texted me a copy with 3 heart emojis. My aunt called from Tulsa that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail twice before Faith made me answer it. Just tell her the truth, Faith said. The worst that happens is she doesn't understand. But when I finally called back, my aunt's first words were, "About time you found someone who makes you smile like that. Bring her to Thanksgiving." I hung up and started crying. Relief and joy and disbelief all tangled together. Faith held me on her couch, stroking my hair, whispering that it was okay, that everything was going to be okay. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I actually believed it. The building purchase finalized on a Thursday in late autumn, exactly 1 year after our theater seat argument. Faith handed me a key to the upstairs apartment she'd been renovating for months, her smile nervous in a way I rarely saw. I was thinking, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. We could share it, if you wanted. There's space for your files, a whole room you could use as an office. My lease was up in 6 weeks. I'd been dreading the conversation about what came next, whether it was too soon, whether suggesting we live together would scare her off. Relief flooded through me. I want that, I said. I want this. She led me upstairs, through rooms filled with restored furniture and soft lamplight. The bedroom was at the back, quiet and private, overlooking the courtyard. Faith turned to face me, her hands shaking slightly as they settled on my waist. I'm nervous, she admitted. Me too. We undressed each other slowly, years of loneliness falling away with each article of clothing. Faith's hands explored my body with careful attention, mapping every curve and line. She whispered how beautiful I was, how long she'd wanted this, her lips following the path of her fingers. When I finally touched her in return, my hesitation dissolved into certainty. We learned each other's rhythms through the night, the age difference meaningless in the face of desire and trust. Afterward, tangled together in sheets that smelled like lavender, I realized I'd never felt this known, this safe, this completely myself with another person. "I love you," Faith whispered against my shoulder. In case that wasn't clear. "It was clear," I said, kissing her temple. "But I'm glad you said it anyway." 6 months passed like a dream. The antique shop expanded into the adjacent storefront using funds from the National Dealer Partnership. I shifted my activism focus to creating a citywide small business preservation network using our cooperative model as a template. We became known around Oklahoma City as the couple who'd saved Bricktown, a reputation that made Faith roll her eyes and Robert make endless jokes. "The lesbian power duo strikes again," he announced one morning when we secured another building for the cooperative. Faith threw a vintage cushion at his head. "Say that one more time, and you're fired." "You can't fire me. I own 10% of this place." I watched them bicker, comfortable in the rhythm of it, amazed that this was my life now. Faith caught me staring and smiled, the private smile that was just for me. "What?" she asked later, when Robert had left and we were closing up the shop. "Nothing. Just happy." "Good." She locked the door and took my hand. "Because I have a surprise." The surprise was 2 tickets to the indie cinema, the same showing we'd fought over a year ago. Same seats, J7 and J8, deliberately booked. "I thought we could do it right this time," she said. We settled into our seats as the previews started. This time, when Faith reached for my hand in the darkness, I didn't hesitate. I laced our fingers together and leaned my head on her shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of old wood and lavender that always clung to her clothes. The movie played, but I barely watched it, content in the quiet intimacy of the moment. This was what I'd been missing for 55 years. What I'd been too afraid to reach for. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but this, someone's hand in mine, steady and sure, promising all the ordinary moments still to come. When the credits rolled, Faith turned to me in the dimness. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For being brave enough to stay. For not running away when it got hard. For choosing this." She gestured between us, her eyes bright. "For choosing us." "Best decision I ever made," I said, and kissed her there in the theater where it all started, where a simple seating mistake had rewritten both our stories into something true. We walked out into the autumn night, her arm around my waist, my head on her shoulder, 2 women who'd found each other later than expected but right on time. The street was quiet, leaves skittering across the pavement, the lights of Bricktown glowing warm in the distance. "Ready to go home?" Faith asked. Home. Our home. The word settled into my chest like a promise finally kept. "Yes," I said. "Let's go home."